Good morning to you all. I'm happy to have this chance today to talk to you about mediation in the construction industry, developing competent facilitators. In our agenda today, I'm going to cover introduction, objectives, research methodology, findings, conclusion, recommendations, and then take questions afterwards. Dispute resolution is portrayed as either being lawyer-led or mediator-facilitated. Because people are complex, solutions for people involve complexity. Mediation practice in the South African construction industry has been developed from arbitration, as it has been seen to be commercially disadvantageous. Like litigation, it can be quite costly, it can take a considerable amount of time, and it could result in the business contract completely coming to a final rupture. Mediation involves parties to submit documents, the mediation session time and date to be scheduled, the mediation session being conducted. And because mediation is non-binding, parties can either reach an agreement and the case is closed, or there is no agreement, so they move on to litigation, arbitration, or additional mediation is sought out. In certain studies, it has shown that for alternative dispute resolution to be effective, to resolve the dispute parties in the construction industry, the mediators, arbitrators, adjudicators, and negotiators require some profound knowledge of the construction industry. And because mediation is extremely people-driven, it is dependent on an effective personal exchange between the parties. So therefore, it is reliant on the competencies of the facilitators that are applying the mediation process. However, it is shown that there is limited knowledge and utilization of specific process skills and techniques. In a study that was conducted by Duprice in 2012, she has stated that mediation in the South African construction industry is not being applied to the standard practice. The process is based on ineffective mediation practice, where the decisions are made for the parties in order to expedite the process, and the psychological needs of the parties are considered to be a waste of time. The objectives for this research is to identify the perceived importance of skills possessed by the mediators, as well as identify the perceived level of skills possessed by the mediators. Mediation role. The mediator's role is to listen assiduously, to help the parties to hear what is of concern, as well as what is of importance for all the parties that are involved. Think creatively, to help the parties come up with substantial options that are potentially beneficial for all. To speak tactfully, to help the parties to be considerable in their responses, as well as to provide feedback towards the mediators. To advise credibly, to help the parties to develop responses and options that are potentially productive for each of the participants. And to conclude supportively, to assist the parties to commit to practical steps to move forward with the agreement that is reached by all. The mediation skills. Mediation requires a range of skills, such as communication skills. Communication skills is required throughout the process of the mediation process, in order to avoid any disorganized or unsuccessful exchange between the parties. This could occur should there not be a structured or a controlled communication. The skills in this category include opening and closing the structure, controlling the flow of information, controlling and filtering negative expressions, active listening, as well as nonverbal communication. Problem solving. Problem solving is there in order to improve the communication between the parties. It opens up a line in order to improve the long-term relationship of the parties. It opens up the line of communication and examines alternative options to resolve the parties in order to meet all of the needs. To do this, the mediator must be able to identify the needs and the issues and the demands in terms of underlying needs and interests, and devising creative solution packages in order to meet all of the party sides. Basic management skills are required by mediators to achieve competence in the mediation facilitation. Basic management skills include planning, directing, coordinating, and reporting. And for an effective mediator will also essentially be a skilled negotiator. The mediation process. The first contact involves individual meetings, where the mediator is going to explore the background of the dispute, and as well as to try and identify what the parties hope to achieve throughout the mediation process. Joint meeting. Here, the mediator will start off with an introduction, an opening statement, and as well as to allow the parties to voice out their position during an uninterrupted period. Exploration of issues. Having agreed on an agenda, the mediator will identify the areas of concern and explore the issues with the parties. Building agreements. As the mediation process develops, the mediator will help the parties to generate and assess the viability of the solutions that are available. Agreement and closure. When an agreement is reached on all the issues, the mediator will provide each of the parties with a copy of an agreement, clarifying the responsibility for delivery. Research methodology. A quantitative study was concluded. A questionnaire was used as a data gathering tool. This was used in order to determine the important competencies and skills that are perceived, and as well as the evidence of mediators possessing these skills and competencies. First, the questionnaire was conducted on Microsoft Excel in order to conduct pilot testing. Once that was completed, it was then created on the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University web surveyor, where emails were sent out with the link to the web surveyor where they could complete the questionnaire online. The data was received from a mailing list of mediators in the South African construction industry, which was obtained from the South African Institute of Civil Engineers, as well as the South African Branch Directory. The population consisted of 83, and since it was under 100, the entire population was used in order to gather data. The response rate that was obtained was 23.17%. The questionnaire design. The questionnaire consisted of 4 sections. The first section was used in order to cover the demographic of the respondents. Section 2 was used for mediator skills, which was on 2 scales. 1, the perceived importance, and as well as the evidence. The third was the mediator's competencies, as well as on 2 scales, the perceived importance and the evidence. The fourth one was open-ended question, which was together with the mediator's thoughts of mediation in the construction industry. 2 scales were identified, one being the perceived level of importance of each skill for a mediator to possess on a Likert scale of 1 to 7, 1 being redundant, 2 imperative for success, and the second one was how evident the skills currently possessed by mediators are, 1 being absolutely no recognition, and 7 fully mastered. As you can see from the table presented above, the top 5 present the skills that the mediators perceive to be the most important, and the bottom 5 are the skills that the mediators perceive to be the least important. The next table presents to us the top 5 skills that the mediators show that they have the highest evidence, and the bottom 5 represents the skills that the mediators have shown to have the least evidence. The research findings had indicated the majority of the most important skills are related to communication skills. In a study that was conducted by Bush, where he has stated that the essential work of the mediator is to support the parties in deliberation, communication, and decision-making. Therefore, skills are necessary in managing the communication in a session. The importance evidence quadrant analysis was undertaken. This was used to integrate the rating of the current importance and the current evidence of the professional levels. The importance evidence is used to assist in identifying the key areas to de-emphasize, maintain or de-emphasize, immediate attention, and continuous improvement. For this research, it was used to assist in identifying the key areas where training was immediately needed. The average rating for importance scale is 80.71%, where 65% of the skills were rated to be above average in terms of importance, and 80% of the skills were related to be above average in terms of evidence by the mediators. The following skills were sought to require immediate attention: devising creative solution packages, persuading the parties to accept the solution and come to an agreement, rapid building, controlling and filtering negative expressions, and nonverbal communication in terms of observing people, being aware of individual differences, and looking at nonverbal communication signals as a group. The following table represents the gap between current importance and current evidence. As we can tell, the bottom 5 show evidence exceeding importance, where here the skills show that mediators have more than what is required of them. And the top half shows that 5 skills have a gap that is exceeding 10%. In conclusion, all the skills that are listed are considered to be imperative, and the professionals that are acting as mediators do feel that they possess the necessary skills that are required for a mediation process, and that there is little gap that is shown between what is expected of a mediator and what skill level the mediators perceive themselves to hold. The highest gap of skills being current importance and current evidence fall under the communication skills group, which is also considered to be the most important. Recommendation. Mediation training and mediation should be brought to the attention of undergraduates, especially since mediation in the construction industry generally does need a number of years of postgraduate experience before they start to understand the industry, as they are in the position to gain the trust of the parties, and that suitable postgraduate programs with strict entrant requirements should be available for experienced engineers, architects, quantity surveyors, or engineers. And training in negotiation and communication is essential, and that some fundamental training and legal training should be a prerequisite. This is to avoid the mediator producing recommendations that are completely out of sync with contract or with the common law. Thank you very much, and I'll take any further questions.
Just in terms of I just want to try and understand from your research perspective, you chose the population, you chose the existing mediators. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
How did you go about just ensuring that you get a subjective feedback? Because in essence, you basically asked the mediators to rate themselves. You know, do you see where I'm coming from? So what did you do in terms of your research just to make sure that you get an objective feedback and they don't look at it and say, well, we actually got it good enough? And what do you do?
Well, the skills that were presented are skills that were found, as well as the competencies as well, were the competencies were found from literature review, and as well as the skills that were found. And I also wanted to also check on their experience, which was used in the demographic, which is gathered from the demographic information, and to try to also the last question in the open-ended question was kind of to perceive what the mediators' thoughts of mediators in the mediation construction industry, where they felt that the gaps were needed, which was used in the open-ended question.
Yeah, just a question too is about your source of information. Why did you particularly choose Institute of Civil Engineers?
Because the Institute of Civil Engineers had provided a list, not just of engineers, it was as well as of architects, construction managers, and there were also some QSs, but they were the ones providing a list of actual construction professionals in the mediation environment.
Yeah, because the RICS, for instance, as well as the Association of Arbitrators, are both active in the development and training of mediators, or perhaps they would have also had a list of guys that were not particularly engineering associated, but with the wider range of mediators. And then the other thing is the awareness that people like RICS and the Association of Arbitrators are both training mediators. Currently, I mean, there's law being developed that where courts will refer matters to mediation before they get referred to the courts. And in the interest of that, those associations are building up databases of trained and skilled mediators and putting them on panels to make them available. So there is much being done to, particularly in the construction industry, to facilitate, to train and experience mediators. Then just the other point, one of the points that you mentioned was assertiveness is one of the characteristics of a mediator. I think one just needs to be careful that that assertiveness isn't the assertiveness of putting across one's own idea. That one can be very assertive in putting forward a solution that is your solution, whereas in mediation you need to steer away or persuade parties, if they're going to accept your solution, that it doesn't seem like it's your solution, but it's that it's come from them. So assertiveness, whilst it can be a positive thing, can also be a negative trait in a mediator.
Yeah, I think the question asked by Mr. Kay answered my question as well. Just one of your recommendations was that there should be suitable programs available, postgraduate programs available. Have you looked into, are there not already suitable programs available?
From what I found is, I didn't see any postgraduate programs in university, but there are, RICS does provide as well, and as well as the South African Associate of Mediators does also have steps in which to become a mediator for training. But I think I was more focused on institutions to provide it as well, universities.
Institutions. Okay, thank you. Roy?
Thanks, Antonio. Just a question, have you looked at the success rate of mediation cases?
I have not looked at the number of success rates of mediation cases. I just looked at the opinions of people that had conducted past researches on mediation. Yeah, otherwise I have not looked at the actual figures.
Thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed it, but it left me with two questions. Would it perhaps not have been advisable to tell your readers of your research and other researchers how the mediator is appointed? Because if you and I have a mediation problem, we need to agree. We need a list of mutually acceptable, possible mediators, and then to agree on somebody from our mutual lists. And also that the mediation process should arise, in my view, after evaluation, an attempt at conciliation, going then into mediation if it can't be solved. And did you wonder how mediators are rewarded for their services, perhaps?
No, unfortunately I did not look at how they are... the question asked on how they paid for their services?
Well, that's putting it bluntly. I didn't want to be blunt.
No, unfortunately I did not look at exactly how that works out in terms of payment for mediators.
No, they're just interesting issues that make your research what examiners term a good read, as well as just being the bare bones of the case. So a little bit of background sometimes adds to the value, although it raises other questions. And the last one is your recommendation on some legal training. Our education involves law as a service course. But don't you think that mediators need to know everything possible about the contract involved, on which claims for and mediation will arise. So I think contractual training, contractual knowledge, and deep-seated experience of contracts is one of the requirements, as well as the ability to conduct legal conversation with confidence, knowing that you're not recommending some outrageous solution, but it should be within the tenets of the law. I agree with that. But contractual, I think, is very important.
Thank you,
Thank
Professor.
you.
Those are
Thank
some
you.
great tips for your final
Yeah.
submission.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you very
appreciate
much.
everything.